Archaeology is the pursuit of revealing the past, and by revealing the past, we bring it back to life once more. When an archaeologist makes a discovery, they could be the very first person to witness it in hundreds or even thousands of years. That creates an incredible sense of awe, and we hope you experience that same feeling of wonder as you watch this video. These are 15 of the most amazing and mind-blowing ancient discoveries that actually exist. So, let's begin with Number 15. Dragon Man and Cima del Elefante Face. Human history never belonged to just one species. That idea became impossible to ignore after two discoveries reshaped the timeline. In China, a huge skull known as Harbin's skull revealed the face of a previously unknown human relative, Homo longi, often called Dragon Man. Dating back over 140,000 years, it belonged to a powerful, cold-adapted population that likely thrived in brutal climates. Evidence now links it to the mysterious Denisovans, once known only through DNA. Meanwhile, in Spain, at Cima del Elefante, researchers uncovered a fragment of a human face over 1 million years old. Its surprisingly modern features challenge long-held assumptions about early evolution. If you put together these discoveries, they reveal a world once shared by many human forms. Neanderthals, Denisovans, and others lived, adapted, and interacted across continents. They weren't distant relatives in theory, they were real populations with lives, struggles, and cultures. Their disappearance is a mystery. What's certain is this: we didn't rise alone. Number 14. The Lost City of Seven Ravines. While the jungles of the Amazon were only just beginning to give up their secrets through LiDAR, another huge discovery was unfolding far from any forest. This time, it happened across the grasslands of the Eurasian steppe. For generations, historians painted a very specific picture of this region. The steppe was always described as a highway for nomads, people who lived in yurts, moved with the seasons, and never stayed long enough to build anything lasting. But that long-held belief didn't survive 2025. A detailed survey led by Dr. Milana and Dr. Victor Mers revealed something entirely different. Known as the City of Seven Ravines, this site wasn't a temporary camp. It was a vast Bronze Age settlement spread across hundreds of acres. The layout showed planning, not improvisation. Rows of structured homes followed a strict grid, pointing to authority and design. What stood here wasn't wandering life. It was permanent, carefully built, then quietly forgotten. But unlike mythical lost ancient cities, this one is real. Number 13. Norton Disney Dodecahedron. Some artifacts refuse to cooperate. You can measure them, scan them, hold them in your hands, and still come away knowing almost nothing. That is exactly what happened in 2025 when volunteers excavating in Norton Disney, Lincolnshire, uncovered one of the finest Roman dodecahedrons ever found in Britain. The object is hollow, bronze, beautifully cast, and shaped with 12 pentagonal faces, each pierced by a different-sized hole and capped with rounded knobs. It looks deliberate. It looks expensive. It also makes almost no sense. Around 130 of these objects are known across the Roman world, yet not one surviving Roman writer bothered to explain what they were. Every theory eventually collapses. Measuring tool? Too inconsistent. Pipe gauge? Same problem. Knitting aid? Possible, but absurdly elaborate for the job. The Norton Disney example appears to have been placed carefully in a Roman pit, not discarded like scrap. That detail matters. Maybe it served a ritual purpose. Maybe it meant something so ordinary to Romans, they never described it. That silence is what makes it maddening. Number 12. Lost City of Paso Temprano. For years, Western Mexico sat in the shadow of the Maya and the Aztecs, treated like a cultural in-between rather than a center in its own right. But that picture took a serious hit in 2025. In Guerrero's Costa Chica region, archaeologists announced the discovery of Paso Temprano, a huge pre-Hispanic urban center hidden beneath overgrowth and long known locally only as stone-covered hills. What makes the site stand out is not just its size, but its shape. Where other Mesoamerican cities favored squares and straight lines, Paso Temprano leaned into circles. Massive round platforms dominate the landscape, some over 150 feet across, built from river stones and packed earth in rising layers. The city also includes elevated elite compounds, residential zones, and a large eye-shaped ball court tied to ritual life. Its position between the highlands and the Pacific coast made it a natural choke point for trade. This was not some forgotten outpost. It was a regional power that history and historians simply failed to keep in view. Number 11. The Tartessos Facies. Tartessos felt more like a rumor than a civilization. Ancient writers described it as a kingdom of staggering wealth in southern Spain, rich in silver and deeply tied to Mediterranean trade, yet the people themselves remained strangely faceless. Then, 2025 changed that. At Casas del Turuelo, archaeologists uncovered 5 sculpted stone busts, the first known human faces ever linked to Tartessian culture. That alone shattered the old belief that Tartessians avoided human representation entirely. 2 of the figures appear to be women adorned with heavy earrings already familiar from earlier treasure finds, but now for the first time those ornaments sit where they belong, on living forms, not buried objects. Another bust shows a warrior in a crested helmet, carved with startling precision. These were not crude symbols. They were portraits made by skilled hands. Found inside a sanctuary deliberately burned, sacrificed, and buried, the statues feel even more haunting. A civilization once treated like a ghost has finally looked back at us. Number 10. Ghost lineage of South America. For years, the story of how people spread across South America seemed very simple. There was nothing complicated about it. That idea shifted in 2025. Genetic analysis of ancient remains from the Pampas revealed something completely unexpected, a distinct lineage that doesn't match any known population today. What makes this even more unusual is the setting. The Pampas is open land, easy to cross, where populations would normally mix over time. But this group remained separate for thousands of years. Archaeological evidence shows they adapted to changing climates, shifting diets, and refining tools as conditions became harsher. Their burial practices suggest deep cultural traditions that no longer exist. Then, around 1,000 years ago, their genetic signature disappears. Whether they were replaced, absorbed, or wiped out remains uncertain. What's clear is this: an entire people lived, thrived, and vanished almost without a trace. What do you think about this discovery? Well, drop your comments below. Number 9. Judean Desert Mystery. The Judean Desert has always looked like a place built for hiding secrets, but this one was never buried in a cave. In 2025, archaeologists working high up on an almost unreachable cliff discovered a small, stepped stone monument unlike anything expected in that harsh landscape. At first glance, it resembled a memorial structure, perhaps a nephesh, but the real shock waited inside. Hidden within the masonry was a cachet from the Hellenistic period: silver tetradrachms, spearheads, arrowheads, and the remains of a combat bow preserved by the desert's brutal dryness. Then came the most valuable part of all: a bundle of papyrus documents written in Greek and Aramaic. These were not religious scrolls. They appear to record troop movements, payments, supply routes, and the workings of a military outpost no surviving source had ever named. Suddenly, the desert no longer feels empty. It feels armed, watched, and politically alive. Whoever built that cliffside monument was clearly protecting a secret that mattered. Number 8. Sunken Sphinxes of Canopus. Looking out across the Mediterranean near Abu Qir Bay today, nothing hints at what lies below. But this calm water hides a city that once thrived with life, ritual, and excess. Canopus was known as both a spiritual center and a place of indulgence where both pilgrims and pleasure seekers moved through the same streets. Then, everything vanished. In a single moment, the ground beneath it gave way, pulling the entire city into the sea. For centuries, it existed only in written accounts. That changed in 2025 when underwater excavations uncovered a massive quartzite sphinx buried deep in the sediment. The statue, marked with the name of Ramses II, had survived in remarkable condition. Around it, divers found ritual objects linked to the worship of Osiris, offering rare insight into ceremonies once performed there. The destruction itself tells its own story. An earthquake triggered the collapse, turning solid ground unstable and dragging everything beneath the water in an instant. So, nothing lasts forever, not even giant statues. Number 7. Aegean Land Bridge. What looks like a sea today may once have been the easiest road into Europe. That is what the 2025 discovery along Turkey's Aegean coast made impossible to ignore. Researchers working near Avalk recovered 138 stone tools, including hand axes and shaped implements, using Middle Paleolithic techniques. On their own, the tools matter. Together, they do something bigger. They confirm that early humans were moving across a landscape that no longer exists. During the Ice Age, sea levels dropped dramatically, exposing a broad plain between Anatolia and the Greek islands. Lesbos, Chios, and Samos would not have stood apart in open water. They would have risen like hills above a connected landmass, rich with rivers, grazing herds, and hunting grounds. That changes the story completely. Europe may not have required an early leap by boat at all. People could have simply walked across. What vanished beneath the sea was not just terrain. It was a lived world, busy with migration, camps, and survival. Number 6. Lost Tomb of Thutmose II. In the royal line of Egypt's 18th dynasty, one figure always felt strangely incomplete. Thutmose I was the conqueror. Hatshepsut was the queen who became pharaoh. Thutmose III became the empire's great military force. But between them stood Thutmose II, a king history kept reducing to a footnote. His mummy had been known for over a century, yet his original tomb remained missing, the one gap in an otherwise mapped royal family. That finally changed in 2025. A joint Egyptian-British mission working in the remote western Wadis uncovered Tomb C4, hidden beneath debris and flood damage. It was simpler than later royal tombs, but the evidence was unmistakable. Fragments of Amduat decoration still clung to the walls, and alabaster vessels carried the cartouche of Thutmose II. More revealing still was the presence of Hatshepsut's name beside his. That detail shifts the story. Instead of a clean usurpation, it suggests a more complicated transfer of power, already unfolding around his death. All right now, let's move to Number 5. The Pumapunku Anomaly. Pumapunku looks less like a ruined temple and more like the remains of a stone system taken apart and scattered. Set high on the Bolivian Altiplano, the site is filled with andesite and sandstone blocks cut with a level of consistency that still feels deeply strange. The famous H blocks are the clearest example. Many seem nearly identical, with sharp internal angles, grooves, sockets, and flat faces that suggest repetition rather than improvisation. That matters because repetition points to planning. These stones were not just shaped to look impressive, they were made to fit. The accepted view is that they were carved from solid rock and moved using manpower, ramps, and careful organization. That may be true, but it still leaves a hard question behind. How did a culture working at over 12,000 feet with limited timber and brutal terrain achieve this kind of modular precision in volcanic stone? Even broken apart, Pumapunku still carries the feeling of a design system far ahead of what people expect. Number 4. Sealed Roman Sarcophagus. Now this one is amazing. Some discoveries feel grand because of scale. This one hits harder because it feels personal. In 2025, archaeologists in Budapest opened a sealed Roman sarcophagus from a quincum and stepped into a funeral untouched for roughly 17 centuries. The limestone coffin still held the complete skeleton of a young elite woman, along with grave goods resting almost exactly where mourners had placed them. Glass vessels lay beside her, unbroken. Gold jewelry still circled her body. A bone hairpin remained near her skull, a quiet reminder that she had been prepared with care and dignity. What makes the burial especially rare is the lead seal that closed the coffin tightly, preserving traces that usually vanish, threads of fabric, even hints of gold woven into her clothing. She was not buried cheaply. She was sent into death dressed as someone whose status mattered. Now scientists may trace her origins, her health, even the oils used in her burial, bringing one Roman life close again. Number 3. The Vesuvius Challenge inside the scroll. Of all the places frozen in time, Herculaneum holds something no one expected to survive. But somehow it did. When the infamous Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, it didn't just destroy the city, it sealed it. Beneath layers of volcanic material, a Roman villa preserved something incredibly rare: a library. Hundreds of scrolls were found, but there was a problem. The heat had turned them into fragile, blackened shapes, impossible to open without destroying them completely. For centuries, they remained unreadable. That changed when researchers stopped trying to physically unroll them. Instead, they turned to advanced imaging and artificial intelligence. Using high-energy scans, scientists created detailed models of the scroll's inner layers. The real challenge came from the ink itself, which blended almost perfectly with the papyrus. What made the breakthrough possible was detecting subtle differences in texture. Once that barrier was crossed, words began to appear. Then sentences. Now entire passages are being recovered, giving voice to ideas that vanished 2,000 years ago. Number 2. The 3,000-year-old Mayan complex. Long before the great Maya capitals rose in full power, something remarkable was already unfolding beneath the forests of northern Guatemala. In 2025, archaeologists revealed a vast pre-classic urban complex dating to around 800 BC. And it changed the timeline forever. Hidden near Uxacton, the site includes 3 connected cities: Los Abuelos, Petnal, and Cambreal, forming a powerful urban triangle that feels too advanced for what scholars once expected from that era. Petnal holds a towering pyramid topped with painted chambers still carrying traces of red, black, and white murals. But the most startling surprise came from Cambreal, where experts uncovered a stucco-lined canal system built to control drainage and preserve sanitation through brutal seasonal rains. That alone shows these builders understood hydraulic engineering far earlier than imagined. Add in ancestor sculptures, astronomical complexes, and linked ceremonial roads, and the picture becomes unmistakable. These were not scattered villages finding their footing. This was a mature civilization already thinking like true city builders. Number 1. Japanese Kofun. The Japanese Kofun are easy to underestimate until you stop thinking of them as hills and start seeing them as engineered monuments. Built between the 3rd and 7th centuries, these massive burial mounds reshaped whole landscapes with a level of planning that feels far beyond simple grave building. The most famous are the keyhole-shaped kofun, with their rounded rear section and broad front extending across enormous distances. Some stretch nearly 500 meters long. That scale alone required huge labor forces, but the real complexity sits in the construction itself. Layers of earth, clay, and gravel had to be stacked carefully enough to resist rain, shifting soil, and time. Then came the stone chambers inside, some using blocks weighing dozens of tons, capped and balanced beneath thousands of tons of earth. Add the moats, the paving stones, and the rows of haniwa lining the terraces, and the whole thing begins to look less like a burial and more like a demonstration of state-level engineering. Well, that's it from us. Thank you for watching. And be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you soon in the next one.